Good evening. Welcome everybody to our special council meeting for Monday, February 26th. This is our second roundtable this term of council. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We have regrets tonight from Councillor McGuire-Blaze. We acknowledge that this land is the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of the First Nations, comprised of the Ojibwe, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi peoples, and of the Huron-Wendat peoples. We value the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and of all the original peoples of Turtle Island who have been living and working on the land from time immemorial. Any declarations of conflicts of interest from members of council? Seeing none, I need a mover and a seconder that we adopt the special council meeting agenda for February 26th. Councillor Mady, Councillor Allard, any questions? Seeing none, all in favor, and that is carried. Needing a mover and a seconder to move into the committee of the whole, where CAO Doug Sweet will be appointed as the presiding officer for the committee of the whole, and that the presiding officer be appointed shall have the discretion and authority to modify, relax, or amend the procedure rulings governing council, and further that upon the completion of the committee of the whole, the special council meeting shall reconvene, and the presiding officer of the committee of the whole shall then rise and report to council any recommendations to council that were made by the resolution of the committee of the whole. So a mover and a seconder for that, please. Deputy Mayor Shepley, Councillor Verbeek, all in favor. And now we'll get another mover and a seconder that council now move into the committee of the whole for a period not to exceed 6:30, so as to consider the items in the agenda. Councillor Guerin, Councillor Mady, all in favor, and that's carried.
Thank you, Mayor Bondi. As Mayor Bondi did mention, council, tonight is our second committee of the whole meeting for this term of council. And again, our goal is to have these meetings every 3 to 4 months. For tonight's meeting, we will follow the same format as previous committee of the whole meetings, where each item will be discussed up to 15 minutes. And the councilor who brought the item forward will provide a brief summary of what they would like to discuss tonight. There will only be discussions on topics tonight, but should council There will only be discussion on topics tonight, but should council feel there should be further direction for an item, it need to be brought forward to a future council meeting. So with that, we'll jump right into it. So the first item on the agenda tonight is regional transit, which is brought forward by Councillor Mady. So to start, I'll ask Councillor Mady if you can provide a summary of what she would like to discuss.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. There's many reasons why regional transit's important for small rural communities like Colchester, Harrow, McGregor, Essex. This becomes even more important when we talk about things like affordable housing and the wraparound services that are going to be needed to go with affordable housing. There's a few things I think are important about regional transit. There's the increased access to opportunities, jobs. Regional employment will allow people to access more jobs outside of our region. Education, as we know, as our students are growing, unless your family in some areas are able to get you into college or university on their own or afford a car for you, it's hard for you to get to those universities or those higher levels of education. Healthcare, there's lots of seniors that no longer are able to drive that live in our communities that do not have access to regional transport. And then, of course, social and other activities. I believe there's some economic benefits that come along with it. We do live in Ward 3 in a very thriving tourist area. That regional transportation will allow more tourists into our area. We're going to induce some car dependencies, and it'll allow more social interaction between different people in different communities. There's also the community development of it, the social cohesion that comes along with community, with rural transport, and it supports sustainability, which is very big in our planning. So I believe that overall, regional transport empowers individuals by offering greater control over their lives and providing access to essential services and opportunities that might otherwise be unavailable to them. It can revitalize rural communities, and it could promote economic growth. So that's why I brought this topic forward tonight.
Any questions, comments? Councillor Verbeek?
Through you, Chair. Thanks for bringing this forward, Councillor Mady. I agree with everything you just said. I'm just wondering, is anybody in the room know more about, there was talk, I know last term about potential bus route down Walker Road from the city to Colchester. I'm wondering if that ever got off the ground, if there's been more talk of it.
The previous council is kind of raised as a future option. So Director Chadwick and myself did meet with Transit Windsor to see, very preliminary. It's something that they could do similar to the Leamington to St. Clair route. But it's very preliminary. No details are really engaged at that time because it'd have to be more work to see if it was feasible, right? So nothing further went with that.
Thank you. Through you. Yeah, I was listening on the radio today and Town of Leamington has an interesting initiative as for March break. They're offering transportation for and they're encouraging the students to use it. And I didn't get exactly how it's done. They weren't really establishing routes. It was more on user demand. You call in and tell them you kind of schedule when you were looking for a ride. I'm not sure exactly how it works. They had a number of destinations mapped out throughout the community, and it looked like a good initiative to look into transit in the town, and perhaps we can do something similar to that, and maybe initiate a bus service for a limited period of time, just to collect information and data as to see where we are as far as the demand for such transportation in our area.
Mayor Bondi?
Recently, the CEO and myself met with MPP Liardi, and we asked if there would be any provincial grants in the future for regional transit, and he said no. It was kind of like he was like, ask us for like the necessities, like, infrastructure, healthcare. So we kind of didn't get like a warm and fuzzy feel that the province is going to be investing in regional transit in the county anytime soon. One thing I'm wondering if our administration, and I know I can't provide direction, but if they can bring back some stats on the Leamington to Windsor bus, and we'll start to see how many of our Essex folks are actually using that service. Let's start to see, I think we want to make sure that continues, because that we could even lose that, and I don't want to lose that. So I want to get stats, and maybe we could do some public surveys about, how interested are you in doing this? The library used to do them before, have surveys on transit. So just a few ideas.
Councillor Allard and Verbeek, but for that, just as an update to add on what Mayor Bondi said, the Leamington Transit existed because there was a grant from the province. So their funding comes from there, and the province has said they will not provide any future funding right now for grants, any new initiatives. They'll continue to fund existing initiatives. That was not only through MPP Liardi, but we had a thing with AMO last year. Councillor Allard.
Asked my question already. Want to know about the use of the transit from Windsor to Leamington.
Verbeek.
That's exactly where I was going to go to, but it was more to see, is it getting to a place where it's sustaining itself, where ridership is covering the cost, or, because I would love to see that run from Windsor to Colchester. But if it's just going to be a big money pit, like I know the Leamington bus did take a few years before the ridership got up. I just wonder if it's gotten to a point where it's kind of sustaining itself.
So with the lack of a grant funding opportunity, would it be cost prohibitive it would likely be cost prohibitive for something the town couldn't possibly take?
At this point, yes. But like a lot of capital projects, if you're shovel ready in grant money, you always want to be ready if grants come out. We're not there. So we'll continue to look. There may be opportunities to get like a grant or some study that done in the future, and we'll continue to look at those type of things. So if grants come out, at least we're ready.
Follow up to Councillor Hammond's comment towards the Leamington system that they're running. It's almost like a bus Uber they were talking about on the radio. And I think it was just, I believe it was just around the Leamington area. It wasn't outside of the municipality at all. Just to clarify that, if it helps at all.
Sure. Yeah, if I was sitting across from Mr. Leonardi, I might have said that regional transportation is a necessity for some people that don't live near a store and that have to get to their food somehow. If we were looking at putting up affordable housing in an area, for example, I hear a lot about like Clees Beach. The closest store to them is a convenience store, which is the highest priced food somebody could actually buy. So without these people having access to get into town, into an area where they can get lower priced food, we're definitely taking away a necessity of their life. Also, I would be a little bit hesitant comparing our bus stop that we have between Leamington, Essex, and Windsor, when all three of those are larger urban areas and areas that are totally underserviced, like McGregor and Colchester, Harrow, might see a much more increased level of users because there's no other options for these people. There's not even a really sustainable taxi company that comes to my mind in any of these wards. I do, however, really like the idea of the Uber buses. At AMO this year, there was a few companies there that offer these services. And I did bring back some of their information. I gladly share it with members of council and administration if they would like to see some of that.
Just with the learning the knowledge that we're going to be losing access to Colchester and stuff, in relationship to that Leamington project on March break, there is a significant weekend in March that the wineries celebrate every year. It's called Mac Madness, coincide with March Madness, but they're going to be quite handicapped this year with that road closure. It might be a good time to experiment with a user paying transportation system for that weekend, particularly just if the town was looking to gather information and look forward to applying for these grants and stuff like that.
Morissette has some answers on some of the questions asked.
Thank you, Mr. Sweet. So I do have a little bit of information and statistics, not much from what was asked, but from last year, July through December, so quarter 3, quarter 4, there was 156 users that got into the bus from the arena in Essex, and there was 112 people that got out of the bus for drop-offs.
Thank you. Don't see any other questions, but administration, as Mayor Bonnie said, there's no direction at these meetings, but we can provide some information. We can follow up with Leamington and forward some more information out to council. Okay, we will move on to our next topic then, which is overnight street parking in the downtown core. And that was brought forward by Deputy Mayor Shepley.
Thank you, through the chair. So it's come to my attention that parking concerns along Main Street and potentially in our Harrow Center. The issue primarily revolves around winter maintenance as vehicles continue to park overnight despite clear signage prohibiting such activity. Currently, enforcement of this rule is lacking, possibly due to lack of reported problems, in fairness. However, the absence of enforcement during snow-free periods, when it's not allowed to get their parking there anyways, that absence of enforcement during those periods may inadvertently signal that it's acceptable to disregard these signs. The presence of parked vehicles poses obstacles for our street sweepers as well. Operations diminish the effectiveness of this service we're investing in. Additionally, during the winter months, the return of these vehicles after snowfall complicates snow removal efforts by contractors. This only hampers road clearance, but also impedes the removal of the piled snow. Our main streets already contend with limited parking space, and permitting overnight parking exacerbates the issue, making it difficult for residents to shop and shop owners and customers of commercial businesses to find parking along Main Street. Given these challenges, is it possible to consider whether we allow overnight parking in our Main Street corridors year-round? Would encourage positive parking behavior and facilitate year-round maintenance.
Thank you. Any questions from any council members on that? So maybe as you think of that, I will turn to Kevin. Maybe we'll go to Director Gerard first to see if it is an issue in terms of winter control and overnight, and then do Mr. Carter after that.
Through the chair. So, yeah, you're correct that there is no overnight parking allowed on Talbot Street from 2 a.m. until 7 a.m. From November 1st until March 31st, and that is to facilitate the removal of snow in the downtown core. There is also a 2-hour parking maximum through that same area, but also includes the areas of Gordon, Wilson, and Fox Street as well. The street sweeping does occur once a week. We don't seem to have too much of an issue now, especially since we've changed to the Flex Street concept in the Essex core. So in Essex Center, restricting parking for the street sweeper in the core itself is not an issue, but on the outskirts, it would be. Yeah, I would say that for sure we do need to continue to maintain that overnight parking is not permitted through that time period of November 1st to March 1st.
Mr. Carter, maybe about enforcement, anything with on-street parking?
Through the chair, specifically when it comes to the downtown core, we have not received complaints from business owners or anyone in terms of report a problem or by phone. If we were made aware of that, if there's potential problems, we would be on that and monitor it. However, we are very proactive by law with residential streets throughout our municipality. Just last week, we did a blitz here in Essex Center, but not on the main street, but in the residential streets. We issued 6 violations. But again, if it's the downtown core in Talbot, we certainly like to be aware of that. If it's after hours, even the OPP can enforce such a parking issue. That's what
Any council member have any questions, comments on this item? Councilor Mady?
you, Chair. It might be just a touch off topic. But we were talking about a parking bylaw, or tweaking our parking bylaws. I was just wondering if maybe inside those new parking bylaws, if there was going to be a little bit of more language for this, or for overnight parking pretty much anywhere in our municipal lots or anything like that to make sure that we get it. But if there's a problem.
Director Malandroukolo?
One of the things that we're doing as we review the parking bylaw is to determine what kind of authority we have for enforcement, and then what the costs of that enforcement are, and what repercussions and what we'll see come from that enforcement. So that is all being considered, and that's stuff that will come. Not specifically up to now, not specifically overnight parking. That's something that we can incorporate into our report.
Councilor Verbeek?
Thanks, Chair. Thank you through the chair, and to the chair. Maybe when you have your next meeting with our OPP, you could just remind them that we want the cars on the main street during the night ticketed if they're there. But if you don't have a meeting coming up, there's the mayor could do it at our next police service board. Just to remind them, make the request.
Shepley?
Thank you through the chair to Director Gerard. Just out of curiosity, in Harrow Center, do we have any of those same requirements now that we do like on Talbot Street? Is there overnight parking allowed in Harrow on Main Street, or is that very similar?
Through the chair, I'm just pulling it up. Sorry. Currently, no, there are no. Oh, sorry. I'll have to look into it for you. The structure of the bylaw is a little tough to navigate, so I'll look into it if you want to continue the discussion.
Not so much in the downtown core, but I would like us to investigate and see how we can have spots throughout our municipality for cycle tourism, where people want to come, they want to park overnight and they want to head off on their bike for a little bit. So I'm not sure if there's anywhere that they can park overnight. Like, where can you park in our town overnight? And then how is that marked, and how do the OPP know that, say that's somebody that's, riding the wineries for a couple days?
Mayor Bondi, we have bike racks at many of our municipal facilities. If you're speaking specifically about the southern end near at the wineries, the Colchester Harbor does have some bike racks, and we're looking at adding some other amenities there. But some other areas throughout the municipality, we have bike racks at the Harrow Arena. We've got the bike storage unit at the pool at the Essex Recreation Complex. So they're always welcome to use those types of amenities. The suggestion would be to bring their own bike lock so that it doesn't get stolen.
In terms of that suggestion, maybe it's something we can work with our manager of communications, some mapping on where our bike racks and that are, kind of put it out there. We'll do Director Gerard and then Councillor Hammond.
Chair, just to circle back on the question about Harrow. So Harrow does have the same parking regulation. The only difference is that it's from 1 a.m. to 7 a.m. And that's on King Street from Walnut to Erie, and then on Queen Street from King Street to Center.
Councillor Hammond.
Another thing about people coming to town to do their biking and stuff like that, they require a place to park their cars and so that they can go on in their bikes. And I find that the Colchester parking lot isn't a very good spot for doing that. So in order to alleviate that problem, they need to be informed of another place that they would be more appropriate for them to park their cars for the day or weekend or whatever while they're off on their bikes. And that would be another suggestion.
Through the chair. Yeah, just thinking about Councillor Hammond's comment there. I mean, if I'm going into someone's town and I'm going to be spending a weekend, I'm either parking where I'm staying, or I could park on any residential street that permits overnight parking, like our side streets and stuff. But I see it could be a problem maybe down in Colchester area, closer to the marina and that. With respect to the downtown cores, just to Dr. Gerard, do we have any signs at all that indicate the bylaw saying parking after between 2 and this is not allowed? I'm just wondering if a lot of times people maybe frequenting the bar establishments, maybe drank too much, want to leave their car overnight because they don't want to drive, but don't know the rule maybe.
The chair, yeah, it is properly signed through the downtown core. It does say no parking from 2 a.m. until 7 a.m. From November 1st to March 31st. If somebody did have too much to drink and maybe they are planning in advance, I would recommend that they park their vehicle in one of the town-owned municipal lots as opposed to on-street parking.
Follow up to that. So I'm not sure if it was the last snowfall we had or the one prior to that one, but I did notice the downtown core people were parking and it hadn't been cleaned of snow yet. I'm just wondering if it's just a timing thing. I mean, people still are going to go out, even if it snowed or started to snow at 4 in the morning. They're going to go out, they're going to park. They may get to those parking spaces before our plows can even get there. So I'm just wondering if we're getting complaints. I haven't received any, but if we're getting complaints, is it really a one-off thing, or is this happening a lot? I mean, in prior councils, I think we talk about snow removal all the time, whether it be sidewalk or that, but I'm just wondering, I think it may be just coincidental in the sense that snow fell, people wanted to get out and we just hadn't cleared it yet, I think.
Yeah, that may be the case. As our CBO mentioned, we haven't received a lot of complaints. Infrastructure hasn't received complaints either, so it may have been a one-off situation. And yeah, we don't clean, it's not, we focus our attention during a snowfall, obviously, to our arterial and collector roads first, and then to onto our local roads, and then focus more on parking and different initiatives like that. So those parking spaces will eventually get plowed, but they aren't the first priority during a snowfall. So that may have been the case.
Any further questions by any council member on this topic? Councilor Mady.
Again, maybe we just got a little bit further off topic, but here are my colleagues talking about the parking in Colchester. I'm really eager for our parking study that's being done in Colchester. And I mean, perhaps if they're paying for a spot there, we could rent that spot out for the weekend that they're going to be biking through our wineries and stuff. Other than that, I mean, we have a great facility in Harrow that's not being very utilized too much in the way of our soccer fields. It has a gorgeous parking lot there. We could probably direct people to park there. Maybe even during some of those really busy summer months, have a nice little electric trailer that's going to bring them down to the beach. It'll be beautiful.
That has some future plans for that complex. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to the next topic, which is bylaw review on penalties and brought forward by Deputy Mayor Shepley.
Thank you, and through the chair. So you'll find a theme with mine, everything ties back to bylaw in some way, shape, or form. Through our term, bylaw enforcement's come up time and time again, and not necessarily they're not doing their job, but the questions about whether the enforcement's there, the ability to enforce, such as the lawn, like property standards, and how we go about doing that. Our parking, whether it's being proactive instead of reactive, and whether we should be looking at them in a proactive manner in some of these. And obviously we can't be proactive for chickens in the backyard, but we can for parking and things like that. Councillor Blaze mentioned to me and wanted me to make sure that I asked the question about whether or not we can multiply these fines or escalate when there's repeat offenders. And I did have a chance to discuss with bylaw a little bit about some of these concerns and to see what their answers were. And for instance, parking, whether we had what type of teeth that bylaw had in it, and for enforcement and for collection, and I'm just wondering if maybe we shouldn't at some point, if we should be reviewing to make sure we have in our bylaws the teeth to enforcement and giving them all the tools that they need to do their job.
Okay, any council comments? But to start, I will go to Mr. Carter.
Through your chair. Some of our bylaws, we do have repeat offenders such as property standards, tall grass, snow removal, and the building code. Again, though, there are bylaws, we don't have repeat offenders because we're not able to write that into our bylaw because it's parking. Say, for instance, it's a ticket through the provincial courts. They don't give us that latitude to have repeat offenders within that mechanism. But some of our in-house bylaws, we certainly do. We are much more proactive now that we have permanent part-time bylaw officers. That's working out quite well. More so recently in our newest subdivision in Essex Town Center, which we all been in, seen the parking mess in there, which I believe we have straightened out. Took some time, especially for snow removal. That has been cleared up. But yeah, in terms of proactive, we are much more proactive. It's come along pretty good. With bylaws, specifically the parking bylaw, like any bylaw, it needs some house cleaning. And we're certainly working on that with legal legislative services, and it'll address those downtown core areas.
Deputy Mayor Shepley.
Direct this to our legal and see are we looking at our parking bylaws, for instance, as one that we would be revamping in order to put more teeth in it, where we would even possibly have the ability to tow in those situations.
Since I've been here in April, that's been on, one of the things that's a priority for us is to look into the parking bylaw. When you look at the bylaws, the way that our authority as a municipality works is it comes from the provincial government. So the provincial government has provided us authority as a municipality. We can do things in accordance with that authority that the provincial government gave us. So what we're doing with the parking bylaw and what we, in general, with any bylaw that we're asked to look into, it's not something that we could look into generally, but specifically if there's a possible problem bylaw, it's to look into what our delegated authority is from the provincial government, what we can do to enforce the issues that are there. And then as far as enforcement goes, how far we can go without overstepping our bounds as a municipal body, right? And that's one of the things that we're doing with the parking bylaw. We're going to be looking at it we're currently looking at it from a full perspective, to see if we're maximizing our authority, if we're not maximizing authority, what we can do to do that, and then what that means from a cost perspective. And if we have, outside of just issuing the penalties and trying to enforce them, if we have the resources to actually ensure that those penalties are being paid for and we're able to enforce the payment of stuff like that. Like there's a whole like circumstance around the whole issue that we're looking into to make sure that it's being done properly.
Follow up, it's kind of, it might be for you. Currently, when we fine a car for parking, that comes to the town. What does that money go to? Does it go to any specific thing, or does it return back to, and I believe it probably should return back to bylaw if we have control of that? I'm not sure.
So if it's an infraction in town, depending on the type, typically it remains with the town. But if depending on the type, it could get submitted to the provincial offenses court, which is then equally split between municipalities. So it depends on the type of infraction, which Joe was getting at, if it's part 1, part 2, part 3. As of right now, infractions like that, we would charge to the bylaw enforcement cost center.
Chair, I do have 2 things. One thing is, does our CAO or Director of Legislative Services know if we're waiting for any bylaws to come back with approval on the fines? I know that was a thing in previous terms of council, and we actually had a delegation to AMO. So are we waiting for any to come back? And then I do have a second question.
I wouldn't mind taking it as a takeaway because I did look into that and there are some things that we're waiting on. But most of the ones that we've applied for, we've received this year. One of the ones that we were waiting on were the short-term rental. And we were waiting on that because of the institution of the appeals committee. But besides that, I think we have pretty much everything, but I'm going to come back to you on that one.
I'm wondering, I know we get internal updates from the CAO's office, but I'm wondering if on our council reports, when we have that report every 3-4 months of the motions that's coming to council, if we could have on the bottom of there a list of the bylaws that we're reviewing, just so members of the public know. Like, for example, I know we're reviewing the greenhouse lights bylaw, but if you're a member of the public, you don't know that that's on our radar. So how do we increase transparency to the public on what we're actually reviewing? We're reviewing animal control, perhaps parking, procedure bylaw. Like even as mayor, I don't really know what bylaws we're reviewing. So having a list would, I think, be helpful to all of us. Thank you.
To Mayor Bondi's comment, it's something we can explore. One of the challenges we have is reviewing our bylaws on a consistent basis, right? Be it annually, biannually. It really comes down to a staff resources. So adding those bylaws on there, they may stay on for a while because it's a matter of getting to them, but we could provide which is on our target list anyways. Okay, any other council members? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to our next topic, which was electric vehicle stations, municipal and or private property. And I'll turn this over to Mayor Bondi.
I think there's been a lot of discussion about electric vehicles, and I just kind of, as the head of council, kind of want to get to know what the will of council is, you know, when I'm out there and talking to others, like what is our appetite? Is this something we see under public jurisdiction or private jurisdiction? One day I was kind of thinking, you know, we don't try to go after grant money or try to open up any private gas stations. So is this something we want to do for electric stations? I know we did get a grant for the one at the Twin Pad Arena, and grants are good, but is this, what level of municipal responsibility are we thinking here? And where does council see us going with this direction?
Director Gerard.
Through the chair, so I do want to let council know that we did actually apply for a grant as well this year, similar to the town Tecumseh, to install electric vehicle charging stations here at Town Hall. That was coupled with the capital project to pilot an electric vehicle. So we are utilizing that budget to attempt to secure some funding for charging stations here at Town Hall. But to facilitate the rest of the conversation for Mayor Bondi and how the municipality wants to go forward with municipal property, you know, that's, you know, I just wanted to provide that context for the discussion.
Thank you. One thing I've noticed is at the Essex Center Sports Complex, we do have them, but it is a challenge at times if there's during busy peak periods, right? When hockey's going on, where people are parking there and they're not charging, not. So it has been a challenge for sure. I know where Mayor Bondi's coming from, and maybe I'll turn a little later because I have Deputy Mayor Shepley next to Director Malandrucolo because he's got some experience as an owner of an electric vehicle. But right now I'll go to Deputy Mayor Shepley.
I'm just curious, just for clarification, are you wondering if we should be putting up more throughout the area than the ones we have currently, and as a way of creating funds for the town? Is that what you were thinking, or I'm just trying to understand what you're wanting to do exactly?
In conversation with Mayor Bondi, question has been, it's very costly to put these stations in, right? Usually you get a grant, but it's not 100%. So there's always the municipality putting in. Even the most recent ones, Director Moore said, the cost for us now to upkeep them is becoming a financial concern in terms of that. So at the end of the day, is it a municipal responsibility to provide these stations, or should it be private, similar to our gas stations, right? They're operated by private industry. So we're just wondering if we're going to keep going down these paths for grants for our properties, or is council okay? I'd still say we apply for grants, as Director Gerard mentioned, if we're going to look at our own fleets, which we're going down that path in the future. But I think that's kind of where, is it our responsibility? We're going to contribute money, or is it something that the private industry should be looking at? Maybe.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I think that both play a role in this. There's distinct advantages offered with municipal and with private ownership of EV charging stations. So some of the municipal EV advantages I would see would be that we could strategically place our stations in areas that are underserved, that a private company might not necessarily go to in the beginning, but that we could set up some infrastructure there to start with through grant funding, of course. Infrastructure planning, as our planning team and our infrastructure are looking at developing new areas, and the type of people that might be buying in that area are thinking of our first eco-friendly housing development that was proposed from the Colchester area. You know, if there's a developer that's going to be developing this type of subdivision in our municipality, we should offer some amenity there for them to help out with that. And of course, the public trust and investment, it just helps that with the public to see that if their municipality is actively involved in something like this, that it would help encourage them to make that leap. Then of course, private, you have the market growth and invention. You know, if you look at new companies that are coming into our area and they want to attract people, they are putting in these So without a doubt, we should not be stepping on their feet or getting in their way. The efficiency and profitability, the more people that are buying these and putting these in, private or municipal, the cheaper they become for everybody. So that'll help out with everything. And then convenience and amenities. When we're promoting our areas, like in the one email I said, it'd be great if people could come down to Colchester Harbor and we have a couple EV stations there so that they could get their car batteries recharged and their solar batteries recharged on our beautiful beach, right? So in my mind, the ideal scenario still involves both participants and that, municipality, we could take more of a public awareness on it and, using some underutilized areas for our EV stations and then allow the private companies to go after the money.
Hammond.
Yeah, I think we're still in a wait and see kind of period as far as how this is going to work out with our housing objectives and the lack of infrastructure that's going on. Today, in the Powerful Mayors Conference, they're there screaming for more infrastructure and more help from the provinces and the feds. So obviously, if we're going to achieve these housing goals and stuff like that, there's going to have to be a lot of help with infrastructure. And I think until and as we're trying to integrate our own electric fleet, I think we need to hold back a little bit and before we commit to this. Eventually, the general public's going to be asking us for info, and then I think that's when we should be providing it.
Darren?
Chair, all good points. Trying to solve an issue that at a municipal level is going to be challenging. I got to think that the upper tier governments and the private industry has to have some sort of plan they're going to come up with. Or as of right now, I don't believe they're pushing on municipalities to start pumping out these charging stations. I don't believe, are they? Right now, are we being told by the government that we predict, the government saying to municipalities, we predict there's going to be X amount of vehicles, X percentage of vehicles in the next 5 years are going to be electric and you need to put in X amount. I don't think that's the case yet. And so I think until we know what it is, I don't think I see some places where we could be ahead of it and put some in that would maybe draw tourism and maybe be in those remote areas like Councilor Mady's saying. But the overall picture, I see it more being like the gas companies now, right?
Mayor Shepley?
So I pretty much think the same thing as Councillor Guerin did. I think at the harbor, when grants are available, it'd be fantastic to have some down there. I think very helpful to that area and the tourism area. I would like to see it even in McGregor if we can get a grant for it. I think one in every, a small footprint in every one of our town centers would be great grant with grants. I don't think we should be throwing our wallet out to pay for all these on our own. But I think we need to let private do what private does best, and they'll fill in all those holes. But I think if we're going to have an electric fleet, it's good to have one in all, at least a station in our centers.
Add to that, the Grove, they took it upon themselves to get their charging stations, and of course they're open to the public. And I think until we see our Airbnbs and other cottages and stuff like that starting to provide charging stations for their customers and stuff like that, I don't think we need to jump into it until that starts to happen. Like I say, the private sector needs to start initiating, and then.
Councilor Guerin?
Through the chair, just adding to all these comments, and I don't believe the charging station we have, even in the Twin Pad, are major revenue generators. I don't believe. So if we're looking at investing to make revenue from, it's very difficult, which I don't understand how they're going to marry that with the private industry, but they'll figure a way. It won't be as cheap it is now. I can't see it.
Mayor Bondi, so the revenue that we tend to see is anywhere between $400 to $700 on a quarterly basis. One thing to keep in mind with that, though, is that we are working with a provider where we have to pay for repairs on the station and upgrades to the technologies. So we're looking at a $10,000 bill just for those components alone. So when things are going well, it goes well, but when we get hit by these bills, spur of the moment, it does tend to hurt it. And with facilities as well, and I'm not for or against doing it, I'm just putting it out there that with they do take up parking spots. So not so much with a big parking lot like the Essex Center Sports Complex, but if we're really in a pinch for parking at the Colchester, right? So if we look at that area and we take up 2 to 4, 6 spots, however many charging stations we put in there, it's only limited to electric vehicles being there. So with the usage that we're seeing at a larger facility like the Essex Center Sports Complex, it may be a consideration that we don't want those at that location just because it's taking up those additional parking spots.
Deputy Mayor Shepley.
Director Morissette, based on that information, are the stations at the arena, I'm assuming we're probably not seeing any positive capital from that. It's probably in the negative side. Considering the cost of those, these new ones that they were discussing in Tecumseh, I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, they're supposed to be considerably cheaper to do. I'm just wondering if you see the price of these coming down with the new innovation coming out, and then will that make what we have currently become obsolete before we get a full use out of it?
Through you, Mayor Bondi. So I'm not the best person necessarily to speak on this behalf. I don't have an electric vehicle myself, so maybe Director Malandrucolo can speak on that. But with any sort of competitive market as the technologies are coming in, it's going to be a more competitive market. So theoretically speaking, the market would dictate that the prices are going to come down. I can't say that for sure, but I would potentially anticipate that. But at the same time, we don't know if there's an economic decline, there could be less grant opportunities out there as well. So it's hard to say with the finances where we are. There's grants out there right now, but we see that they're covering anywhere between 50 and 75% of the cost. And the most recent quotes that we've received for level 3 stations, we're looking at minimum $150,000. So there is quite a bit of capital that we'd have to put out there to be able to get these on site.
Director Malandrucolo, just for clarification for council, you kind of have 2 options, right? You have the quick charger and I'm going to call it the overnight charging, which could take up to hours versus your 15 to 45 minutes. So anything we've been looking at, our property would be the EV, I think the level 3 they're called for the quick chargers. Director Malandrucolo?
So I offered to give some information today because I've had an electric car for 2 years. It'll be 2 years in June. And my understanding of what I thought it was going to be like to have an electric car and how it is now is completely different. So a lot of the things that I was worried about before I purchased an electric car were things that I never needed to be worried about. So the first thing is that I can drive my car for about 4 hours without needing a charge. I installed a NEMA 50 plug in my house for $2,000. It's now code to have that roughed in a house. I can charge at my house overnight for about $5. To charge on a Tesla supercharger, it cost me about $25 to $30. So I would never choose to use a charger unless I really had to. So the only times that I ever really use a charger is if I'm traveling, or if I ever forgot to charge, which doesn't happen because you can schedule it. So it's only basically for charging. For traveling. So, and that being said, is when I'm traveling, I'm probably not stopping at a regular charger. I'm going to stop at a supercharger because if I stop at a regular charger, I get 10% of charge, about 10% of charge for every hour. So with 10% of charge, I can go about 40 kilometers. So that wouldn't be enough for me to stop at a regular charger. So if I was going to use a regular charger, it would be there at my place of employment. Or if I had no other options, let's say I stopped for a hockey game and I was going to go and I traveled to watch a hockey game and I was going to put a little bit of charge in and then go use a supercharger later, then I might use it for a little bit of charge, but I would never be able to stay at some place for, let's say, that 60% charge that I need to get that full charge. So only a supercharger makes sense to me in my normal use. And I would only use that. I've used a supercharger since I purchased the vehicle about 8 times. Every night I'll charge it for my $5 and I'll use it all day long without problem. I can go to London and back without charging once. I mean, you have to think about all that when you start thinking of investing, because it's not what you think it is. It's not like a gas station where you're going to go and use it all the time. Like I've only used it 5 times a year.
Counselor Meady, and then Counselor Guerin will have the last word on this topic.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, and thank you to Director Malanjucro. That's a great summary there. That I remember the first time anybody talked to me about EV vehicles and the term range anxiety came up. They said the only people that have range anxiety are people that don't own any vehicle. So that's great that you would bring it up like that. And also to think of gas stations never getting government subsidies. Like maybe not in our lifetime, but if you go back into the early times when gasoline was first coming out, there probably wouldn't be like a Standard Oil company if they didn't have government partnerships to begin with. So you got to look at the time and place, right? Like we're at the very beginning of this, at the very beginning of gas, there was definitely government and private partnerships, and we're at the very beginning of this, so we're going to have that again. And thank you again for very much for, there's quite a few points that I was going to make on the difference on where municipal and where private should be looking at stuff. For a municipal focus, we'd be looking at accessibility, we'd be looking at equity, we'd be looking at overall public good on where we might put an EV charging station in. Whereas for a private, they're looking for market growth and profitability only, right? Which, as Director Malanjucro said, that the profitability isn't there for us to be looking at that as an investment yet. The investment that actually comes from it is public funding for a municipality, where yes, we'd have to be looking at grants. We would want to take the cost on all of ourselves, whereas a private company would be totally on their end of it. Of course, the location, again, municipalities will be looking at our underserviced and our tourist locations, where private's going to be looking at just high traffic and near amenity. There's quite a few reasons why I believe that we still need to be a partnership when all of this is coming out.
Really good discussion, and I'll just kind of add one thing. I think everybody had talked about, there's a lot of good points. Councillor Meady, especially the pros and cons. We have met with our local LDCs within our municipality, be ELK and Hydro One, and they still have the challenge of the infrastructure of like Councillor Hammond mentioned. They draw so much, so we would like to put them with new developers and all that, but they really promoting we still need that infrastructure. Okay, with that said, we will move on to the next topic, which is first aid CPR for DFibs in a minute, and how we can provide community support, and that will be Councillor Meady.
Thank you, and through you again, Chair. Last year, our mayor started a great initiative there where we held first aid and CPR courses, and we carried them through almost all of the wards, I believe all the wards. And they were, in my opinion, a huge success. At the one that Councillor Allard and myself were hosting, we were made aware that there's quite a few businesses that have gone through the expense of buying an AED and setting up in their company, but over the years have lost the staff that was trained in using these AEDs, which is concerning. Was concerning for me, given our demographic. We do have an aging population here in Essex, and then the second thing is that people didn't know where these AEDs are. So it became kind of a concern for me that we should have maybe one more training session offered to our companies or businesses in our municipality that have AEDs already, but do not have trained personnel for them, so we can bring them up to a good level, and to create some kind of a user map where the general public would know where AEDs are, so that if there was ever an emergency, and I could think of one that happened where a gentleman lost his life right out front of a business that had an AED in it. And maybe if more people knew that there was one not 20 feet from where this poor individual was, he could still be alive with us today. So that's why I brought this forward for tonight.
CAO suite. I've been working with some paramedics at the county level, and they're working on getting our public AEDs up and loading on an app. So there's an app called Pulse Point, where you can look and you can see where some of them are. So that is a work in progress. I'm not sure how we can capture some of the private. We might have to do some work to get the private AEDs, but yeah, I think we do need to keep working on this. I would say anytime any counselor can use their council contingency funds and throw another course. I think that's like the best use of our money, right? If we can do that again. And there's one more thing I had to say. Oh, I also think we need an internal review of where our AEDs are located, like our town facility AEDs, because I still don't see all the little little posters coming out of the wall. That's all. Thank you.
Counselor Allard?
I'm just wondering on kind of advancing that, if there's a sign that can be put at a store window that a store has an AED available and possibly somebody trained, so that people know, because like Councilor May had said, person that passed away out in front of one of our businesses, where a sign might have warned the pedestrian that, hey, they've got one in there, I'll go get it.
Deputy Mayor Shepley?
Well, things, I'm wondering, one, is there any subsidies out there for businesses to get these and the training? What the cost might be for these systems, and do we currently at every one of the town facilities where we have them, do we always have a trained staff member there that can use them?
Through you, Mayor Bondi. So we do have trained staff. All of our staff in our facilities have to be trained on AED units and CPR first aid. So that anytime there's a facility that's open, we do have that. We are working to make sure that we are getting our AED units on the app that Mayor Bondi has said. Just workload. It's on our list of things to do. So we are working on that. In terms of signage, we're looking to try and get exterior signage on our facilities, but we can't control what the private industry does. If they're looking for things, then they would have to get the signage to be able to put on their own facilities. If anybody is looking to have CPR first aid training, they're always welcome to contact our rec team. We do have in-house training staff that does that. So if they're looking to get everybody in their business, we can have a private class, or they can get on a wait list. And next time we have a class, we can reach out to them and get them any sort of training that they do need. If council wants to fund that, then they can certainly work with myself and my team, and we can get that coordinated to have another session. I don't know if we would necessarily want to specifically target businesses. We did try that last December. Could have been because it was close to the holidays where it wasn't successful. But the other ones where it was just open to everybody were very successful and went very quickly. So if that's the appetite of council, we can certainly look at doing that again.
Deputy Mayor Shepley, then Councilor Giron.
Just quickly, I'm just not sure. Is anybody aware of what the cost of one of these units would be and the training? And if there's any subsidies out there for business owners, something that we could direct them to?
Through you, Mayor Bondi, I'm not familiar with any specific grants at this time. I can certainly do some research and find that out. But the units are, I want to say, around the $2,000 to $3,000 mark to be able to get one. And it would be on, hopefully there's grants out there. That there have been in the past, but it would be certainly very important that the business owner that would have it would also have CPR first aid training with that. I don't believe it's a requirement for them to have it in their facility because it's still something that the regular public could go in and access. I don't want to speak in a legal sense if that's the case or not, but certainly, again, we can offer that training if they call us and say that that's the training that they're looking for.
Thanks to the chair. Yeah, 73's just purchased a defib a 3 months ago, and I think it was $4,000. Pretty inexpensive when you consider you're saving a life with it, right? And my understanding is you don't need any training on them at all. Like pretty much as soon as you start it's kind of a self-monitoring thing. It talks to you, and it won't, if it doesn't detect if it doesn't detect that you need it, it won't work. So, but I still think it'd be nice if our training was offered on, and then when you're in the situation, it's a little less of a panic. Is there any appetite to lobby upper tier governments to force public places to register the defibrillators with the various apps. I think there's about 3 or 4 apps right now that are kind of like the big ones that everyone uses, but I'm not sure. I mean, I'd be interested in that if everyone else is. I think specifically in the public, I think when you start talking about private, it's a little bit different. But I really like the suggestion that Councillor Allard has, if we want to, within our own municipality, you know, speak to our businesses and ask them if they have one to post it on their windows or make it a public knowledge to everyone. That'd be great. BIAs could spread the word, et cetera.
I'll go to Director Morissette. One thing of what I'm hearing, and maybe we can use our staff liaison with the BIA and Herald Chamber. Maybe that's something that they can promote with their business and some of their funding every year to do an annual training. So it's out there, maybe have them work with their own businesses. Director Morissette, you want to add an update, and then Councillor Verbeek. Back.
Thank you. So one thing that we do have to do, and it's just not necessarily put out there for the public, but all of our units are registered. So EMS dispatchers and fire dispatch does know that we have them in the facilities, but that wouldn't be the case for the public setting. So, or sorry, for the private sector. So it would be something that we can maybe put out, as CAO Sweet said, maybe we can put that out to our chamber and BIA once we get registered, what the process is like, and see if everybody that has them can also register them on the apps, and we'll potentially be able to get a database of how many apps there are out there, and these are the apps that we're kind of suggesting that you would use.
Through you, Chair. I guess it's kind of like a yes or no question. So every 2 years when I research, there's a 20-minute segment on the defib machines, and there's, you know, every couple have the real machine without the not working to learn on and practice on. Do we have that at our facility? If this year when we offer the CPR to the public, can we add that the segment on defib? Are we equipped for that?
Mayor Bondi, yes, we do have practical hands-on experiences once you're in the court.
You, Chair. Yeah, that was a great idea about having our business liaison work with our chamber and our BIA and find out what businesses are interested in it. And to go along with Councillor Allard's great idea of having a sign in the window, you know, if it's allowed, I would definitely give some of my councillor contingency money to any businesses that wanted to have that sign. I would help fund that just to do good in our community.
Any other council members? Good discussion again. Okay, we'll go to the next item, which is street light repair process. Mayor Bondi.
Sweet. I would say last summer, last fall, there seemed to be an abundance of complaints on my desk, and I think many other councilors' desks about streetlights and kind of a little bit of the backlog. And since we've done some digging, I've been informed that it takes quite a while for supply chains to order. 6 to 12 month delay, sometimes ordering the parts. But I was hoping, CAO Sweet, that you could update members of the public on kind of where we are, what we've done, or Director Gerard or someone, because I think we've made a lot of progress recently on this.
Or to Director Gerard.
Through the chair. Yeah, so we've made some changes to our streetlight repair process, especially given the fact that we've kind of been inundated with so many outages. So what happens right now is that residents who notice a streetlight outage can submit a service request to the town through our work order system by either calling town hall or utilizing report a problem online. That work order is then sent to ELK from the town. So the town receives it, ELK receives it. The town then acknowledges the receipt of that service request to the resident if that resident has opted to do so. So if they haven't submitted their service request anonymously and they provided contact information, we'll contact that resident. It's then then ELK completes an assessment of the street light, and they make repairs immediately wherever it's possible. Where parts are required, the parts are then ordered, and when they come in, they complete the repair once parts come in. After that, ELK will update the town weekly. So every week we receive an update from ELK on any streetlights that have been repaired. And then the town will update or close that service request once that we receive confirmation from ELK that it has in fact been completed and fixed. In addition to this process, we've also created maps available on our website for the public and for council to view the outages, the current outages. Those maps are updated on a bi-weekly basis, so every 2 weeks. They're actually planned to be updated by the end of this week. Since our last set of maps, there's been a couple of additional streetlights that have gone out, but we've cleared a minimum of at least 30 lights since our last map 2 weeks ago. So there's been a substantial amount of streetlights being repaired over the last couple of weeks.
Any other council questions, comments? Councilor Hammond?
As far as the reported problem in streetlights, you said that the town does get back to you, but I've been getting complaints that the town's not getting back to them, and I'm getting reports from the town that the reported problem is going directly to ELK, and the town's not getting that information to give back to the complainant. So the conflicting reports I'm getting from administration and the people that are making the problems, and I've looked into it myself. And so what is it? Are we getting back to the complainants after they report a problem regarding streetlights? Or are we just relying on ELK?
Through the chair, we don't rely on ELK to respond to any residents. They're residents of the town of Essex. So when a service request is submitted through report a problem, the town will actually touch base with the resident once we receive it. But the process is that ELK will receive that work order automatically. So from the town's internal process, ELK is automatically notified the second that service request is created. But we are the ones at the town that are touching base with those residents directly after. If you're getting conflicting information, I just ask that you send me the work order number and I can look into each individual case. But that is a process that we established over 2 weeks ago to touch base immediately after receiving.
Onto that, when they do submit a report a problem, if it's online, they automatically do get an email. They'll say it has been sent to ELK. At times you may be getting complaints, well, they're not telling me when it's going to be repaired. We won't know that until we get information back from ELK. And that's what Director Gerard's saying, and we can follow up at that time. But they should be automatically receiving a comment when they do submit it.
We are actually, in addition to the automatic response you'll receive from the work order system, we're actually having staff review those daily. So when those reports come in, they're also touching base additionally on top of that to just let the resident know that we have received it, that it has been placed in queue, that it is with ELK. So we are doing one additional communication measure to try and make sure that residents are kept informed. But as CAO Sweet did mention, until we get an update from ELK or which, you know, they're not necessarily updating us on every single street light, but they're doing it on a weekly basis. So residents can expect that, you know, by Tuesday or Wednesday of every week, they'll receive some kind of response if there's been an action on that street.
Lovely.
So, yeah, this is one that was quite, we were hearing about it all the time. And I can see now that kudos to ELK and whoever they're using to get us caught up. It is happening. It's good to see. My question's kind of it's about stoplights. Just since we're on the topic, is there an update of when we'll have our stoplights on Main Street? That's one that I keep getting asked. I figured now I sneak it in there because it's kind of similar.
Through the chair, you know, it's funny because I'll talk to one counselor who says we should not put the lights up, and then I talk to another one who says, when are they coming back? It works better as a three-way stop. But no, we have an actual project meeting with the contractor tomorrow, where we anticipate asking those types of questions. We do have confirmation that they will be back on site to finish the remaining works in probably late April. But we do want to see if there's any movement that we can get done on some of the outstanding items that like the traffic signals before that time. So we'll get a better update tomorrow.
You're Shepley going off the agenda, but we'll go to Councillor Giron.
Thanks through the chair. Yeah, to the streetlight discussion, I'm just glad it's not the intersection of Dougal and Tecumseh Road in Windsor. I mean, my God, I don't know, people just don't understand what's taking so long, but it is what it is. I guess at this point, we got to get the contractor to move on it. Since the resident has to go through the report of problem and it is regarding ELK having to take care of, you did mention, Kevin, that, you know, by the following week or Tuesday, if something was updated, they would get contacted about it, but it could go on a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks from hearing before they get anything back from the town. And the nature of the resident calling in is they want it done right now. That's just the way it is, right? Maybe on those ones like for ELK, and maybe the bounce back to them should be, it's in ELK's hand. This particular lighting is a contracted job, and it could expect up to 2, 3, 4 months before it can be resolved. Please be patient. We will update you as soon as we know. Because right now it's just open-ended and people are just waiting and nothing's happening. And they think, well, maybe they didn't get it, so I better call Councillor Giron or Councillor Verbeek about it, right? So I'm just wondering if on that reply back, there could be, because that one is not going to be resolved in 2, 3, 4, or 5 days. It's not as simple as that. Some verbiage that just states that it's going to take a little longer, if that's not even all there now.
Yeah, there is no timeline now in the automatic bounce back. That's a good suggestion. However, our work order system is fairly limited in its capabilities, but we'll take that back and see what we could do in terms of that. I don't know if it's something that can be changed for just streetlights or if it'll do for everything, which everything has a different window. But we'll look into it. It's a good suggestion. Thank you.
Any other council members on streetlights? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next topic. Drainage work around crops. Councillor Verbeek.
All right. Oh, thank you, through you, Chair. So just, so when we clean the ditches along our county roads, at times the practice is to dig and to, you know, drop the sludge from the bottom of the ditch along the edge of the fields. So in the past, we've had farmers have voiced concerns because the dirt piles are in some instances impeding the farming or ruining some other crop. I understand when we're scheduling the work, there's all the considerations, the guidelines around protecting our endangered species, makes quite a narrow window that the work can be done. The weather, you know, affects the scheduling. But we must know in advance what roads the crews are going to be working on, like at some point in advance of the work. So like there's a plan of what ditches are going to be done during the season. So I'm just wondering, by letting the farmers know in advance, it's not going to change our course of work, like our work plan, but it may, however, allow the farmer to kind of negotiate their work accordingly. So for instance, as one farmer had told me, they could maybe, one of the times that the dredging had happened, all the dirt showed up on their land, and it was, so maybe it's only 6 or 8 feet of the muck that's laid on the farm, but that goes across, say, the front 50 acres. And he, in this one instance, would have removed his crop the day before if he'd known it was going to happen, instead of lose all that. Or could possibly, sometimes when that happens, just hold off planting by a little bit to save that loss. Because from what, I'm not a farmer, but from what I understand, in some of these instances, they've lost a fair amount. So I'm just wondering if there's just a way, I mean, we know at the beginning of the season how many roads we're gonna do. If we could maybe just put a letter in the mailbox or a notice in the newspaper that, you know, sometime in the next 2 weeks, we're doing road A, B, and C. And then the farmer could take it from there if they're able to negotiate around the effects it'll have.
So, yeah, there's a lot of information in there, so I'm gonna try and provide a little bit of information as well to the other counselors who may not know about drainage and some of the restrictions. I know obviously Counselor Verbeek does, especially being a Ward 2 counselor, know a lot about the Drainage Act and being a longtime counselor as well. But you know, we do our best to provide notice in terms of construction and maintenance on drains. We do in fact notify residents and farmers in advance by letter and sometimes by knocking on doors if that's available. However, you know, farm fields don't always have a house and they don't always live there, but we do send a notice by mail to let them know that that work will be undertaken. Scheduling around crop placement is very difficult. We do it wherever we can. The issue is that we do have to follow provincial and federal regulations, so DFO and any provincial significant endangered species. So, you know, we have a fish window. We're not allowed to work within water between March and July 15th. We're not allowed to work because of turtles and snakes between October and May. We have bird nesting windows that we have to follow, weather conditions. So really we can only conduct drainage works, like actual in-water drainage works, between July 15th and the end of September. It's a very short window in which we can do all of our drainage works in the entire town. And that just happens to be crop season, right? Optimal crop season. So we do try to notify as best as we can. However, you know, there are a lot of times where if we notify a farmer in advance and say, hey, we're going to be conducting these drainage works, we're going to be working within the working corridor, which may impact your crops. And then for whatever reason, there's a delay in the project or contractor or procurement, then the farmer's coming back and saying, well, I could have planted crops there and you said you were going to do work and now I want to be compensated for that. So it goes kind of both ways, right? So there's times where, you know, we've had to take out crops and there's times where if we leave the crops, they're upset that they left the crops because we didn't get there in time and they could have done a plant. So we do our best to schedule around that as best as possible. You know, I think we've had a lot of conversation in my 4+ years here at Essex on notification and drainage and farmers, and we have taken some additional practices to notify more in advance. I don't really know how much more we could provide, especially with the tight windows and restrictions that we have within the Drainage Act to follow those timelines. So yeah, we'll continue to do our best in terms of notification and we'll continue to try and notify those farmers, especially, you know, we value agricultural activity in our area. We know it's an important part of our economy here in Essex. The goal is not obviously to impede their ability to farm. However, you know, the drainage is an important aspect of their farming practice as well.
Verbeek?
I appreciate that answer. And that's all I can ask is that you continue with the messaging to get it out ahead to them. But to be honest, I want to put it out there that I got no complaints last year, and you know my ward. That's where I'm like, that was an early on complaint for me my first term a number of times. I didn't get complaints last year. So you know, you must be improving on the messaging or they're getting it. Something else that while you were answering, I was listening to you and I thought, you know, I'm sure there's incidents where you are indeed getting it out there. And because there's so much I've learned in the last few years, there's so much farming happening that isn't by the actual property owners because of leasing and such. So that could also sort of impinge on the, you know, the messaging could get hung up there with the property owner and the farm person actually farming. Thank you.
There's nothing's prohibiting the farmer from calling in and asking if there's going to be any such work done related to their fields, especially for the farmers that are renting? Would that not be an option as well?
Chair, that is an option. They can certainly call our drainage superintendent to find out what works are scheduled for the year. It's not necessarily that they're scheduled, it's kind of a rolling thing, right? As council knows, you receive engineering appointments on a regular basis all throughout the year, so you know that it's not necessarily just a seasonal thing, but it continues to happen. But that is actually a very good point that Councillor Verbeek brought up, that, you know, the farmer may not be the landowner. So a lot of the impacts of drainage involves the landowner, not the tenant. So if they have a drainage assessment, things like that, it would be the obligation between the tenant and the landowner to communicate that to each other. We would have no other way to do that, so.
That's great, because like, as you can see the work that's being done, and you would be able to anticipate, well, if they're done that there's a good chance they're going to be doing my field next. So, you know, I would think that would warrant a call. But at the same time, as we're cleaning out our ditches and stuff like that, I can't help but get concerns that we're getting ahead of ourselves, because as we increase our flow and everything, and most of our flow goes to other communities, are the other communities doing the same, or are we just shooting ourselves in the foot by getting our water to go to Harrow faster and then not having a place for it to go to get out faster? Because I would think that if you want to speed up your drainage, getting off your land, that you would start at the lake first and work your way backwards. We seem to be working backwards, trying to push forward.
Other municipalities, but maybe Director Gerard, do you know what the standard is in some other surrounding municipalities?
Yeah, through the chair, the drainage process is a very strict process. Everyone's following the same thing. You're not wrong that you know, the amount of water going into these ditches has increased year after year. A lot of that has to, you know, is not only from, you know, hardscape development, but you're right, agricultural property as well. Farmers are tiling their fields, they're putting water in the ditches faster. That is a sure thing. The ditches are not necessarily getting larger. The only time that a ditch is getting larger is when council approves a Section 78 under the Drainage Act to improve drainage or make a change to that drain itself. However, most of the complaints that we're getting or on this topic would be related to maintenance, which would be returning the drain to its original design and assessing the cost for that maintenance to those benefiting property owners. It would be construction works like new drains, Section 78 drains where you're conducting, you know, a benefit or making that drain larger, that you're going to be increasing the capacity and bringing water more quickly. So those are the things that you want to kind of look out for when you're looking at drainage reports going forward is, are we just looking at assessment schedules? Are we doing a Section 78, just conducting maintenance? Those are the types of things that you want to be keenly aware of when looking at those drainage reports.
Chair. When I first saw this on the agenda, I was kind of wondering where it was going, what the complaints were, and I've heard those complaints quite a bit too. During the last round of flooding, I learned a lot of different complaints, and something that maybe my colleague, Councillor Hamden was referring to, that a lot of farmers were talking about, like, when they want the water gone, they can't get rid of it, and when they want it, they can't keep it. And there's a technique out there called controlled drainage. I'm not too familiar with it. I don't know if our Director of Infrastructure might be more, but it's my understanding is that it's a system where the farmers can actually control their own valves on the drainage on their property and allow as much water in or out. I'm wondering if we have this in Essex, or if we have a model about this.
So no, there's not any farmers that I'm aware of in the area that have this type of system. Essentially what it sounds like is a stormwater management system, but for agricultural property. So in essence, that would be, you know, the farmer tiles their field, they tile it into a common line, and then they have the ability to release or discharge the water when they want. That's, you know, that could pose some risks to our stormwater management system depending on how it's designed. That's typically not how things are designed, though. There is some significant cost that would be borne by the farmer to do something like that. Just with valving and drainage areas, different things like that. Plus, similarly, it's a lot more work to try and monitor how much water is in your system. Do I need to drain it? Okay, it's raining. Do I need to go out? It's snowing. Do I need to go out? So, I mean, it's not something that would be, widespread that I could see, but certainly something that could be done. There's nothing that the town would do to prohibit this at this time. As agricultural runoff isn't necessarily a big risk when it comes to stormwater management and how our system reacts.
Touch up on the water management that Mr. Matthew was referring to. Growing up, farmers in our community, mind you, farming was a little different back then. But they utilized the pond system as a way of holding water to drain their fields faster. They put it into what I refer to as a Dutch dike that holds water. Now, the municipality used to use them as well too along Snake Lane to make the road more firmer because of the low water table there. These ponds, many of them have been filled in, and the benefit from them is no longer there, and it results in sloppy dirt roads and people's basements getting filled up. Definitely something that I think that we could look into and go back to an old science maybe.
Any other comments, questions from council? Seeing none, we'll head into our last topic, which is off-road vehicles from Deputy Mayor Shepley.
You're the chair. Best for last, I guess. When it comes to off-road vehicles, it's important to note that this matter has been previously discussed within council. As it stands, our municipality lacks a bylaw either permitting or prohibiting the use of these vehicles. While the Highway Traffic Act permits such usage, it is up to the individual municipalities to enact specific bylaws governing their use. Currently, there may be a lack of awareness among the general public regarding the prohibition of using the shoulder of our roads for ATV or ORV activities. I understand this common misconception surrounding these vehicles, as I personally own one, as do many of my friends and fellow residents. In fact, I provide I provide assistance to many of our seniors and some of our needy in the area to do snow removal. So you'll often see me running down the road to do that, not realizing until recently that this was a prohibited activity to be running down our road. I think to date, there's a lot of look the other way to this situation because there's a lack of a bylaw. Moreover, our neighboring municipality, Chatham-Kent, has a bylaw that allows for the regulation of ATV ORV usage, specifying permissible areas while restricting access to certain roads such as main streets. We could consider implementing a similar approach accompanied by compliance measures like requiring full licensing, insurance, and safety equipment for all riders. It's worth mentioning that snow machines are permitted on our streets under certain conditions, plated insurance and safety requirements. This raises questions about the inconsistency in our regulations, especially when comparing them to the leniency given to e-bike riders. They are on our roads with no insurance, no license, and no insurance at all. Contrary to the belief that ATV ORV usage would result in rampant misuse, a permit system could be established to regulate and generate revenue for bylaw enforcement. Responsible riders would also likely support such measures and self-police within their community. And at that, I'll leave it for everybody to discuss.
Mayor Shepley, just want to kind of add on, and Deputy Mayor Shepley is correct. I think every council term this item comes up. So there have been past reports in 2013, 2016, 2017. There's 2 reports. There was open houses. The OPP is commented, our insurance company. And what I can do is I can forward all that information to council so you can read what was happened in the past. So you also have that kind of background information. As Deputy Mayor Shepley did mention, the county currently does have a bylaw, I believe, prohibiting on their vehicles. So getting from a municipal road to our next municipal road, that was a challenge that was experienced in the past. You'd have to cross a county road. So I will, after this, forward all those past reports to council because there's a lot of new members, so you can kind of see there. And I'll open it up. Any other further conversation, discussion on this topic? Oh, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, that is true about the county roads, and it's important to note that they are allowed to cross them at a 90-degree. They're not allowed to run down them, but they are allowed to cross them at a 90-degree. And I did want to mention, I cut myself off early, I didn't scroll down. But overall, I urge council to consider the potential benefits of implementing comprehensive bylaw regarding ATV or RV usage, taking into account both safety concerns and the interests of residents who responsibly enjoy these recreational activities. Also, I'll note that I'm aware that at certain events that we've held, not necessarily town events that we've held, but events that are held on our town property, we've used ATV and ORVs to shuttle residents from parking lots to certain areas. And while it's not a town event, it's an event held at our town, and this usage is permitted. And I think that it just goes again to the inconsistency of they're being used throughout the area, and by lack of bylaw, that would encourage this possibly bad behavior running through fields and so on and so forth. So that was really the whole interest behind it. And people like myself wouldn't be able to use them based on my knowledge I have now.
Any council members, questions, comments? Councilor Mady.
It's definitely something that we need to address. I would like to see that we do it as an interim basis so that we can collect data. I know ATV use along the beaches and stuff like that and even mini bikes, as far as that is quite prevalent, especially among minors while teenagers, they need transportation. And you don't see a lot of them on bikes anymore. And guess what they're riding? Yeah, gas powered. So there's a lot, like Rob says, there's a lot of people that are using them. And there's no reason why we can't license like, snowmobiles, you know, recreation, stuff like that. They are a working vehicle as well. I think it's time to give it a shot and see if it pans out.
Allard?
Sorry, through the chair. When I saw this come on the docket, I spoke to Rob about it before. And a lot of the ones I see coming in my area are kids are driving. And not old enough, don't have the license, don't have insurance. And it's just something that somebody's gonna get hurt and the town's gonna be liable for it.
Good chair. So I'm assuming then, I'm not very knowledgeable on the ATV aspect, but I'm assuming that MTO leaves it up to the municipalities to decide whether they want to write a bylaw to permit or not permit them. And I assume they do the same thing with e-bikes and scooters and such, or no? What do they do for e-bikes and scooters? Are they excluded from our bylaw, by the way, ATVs, or ATVs are excluded, but are e-bikes and scooters and these ones that you can get and drive that you don't need a license to drive? Can you just drive them on, are they permitted on in our bylaw or not?
See some faces, something we have be a takeaway I'll have to get back to. I think with e-bikes, they may have a license. Deputy Mayor Shepley.
My understanding, I mean, I wouldn't guarantee it, but my understanding is no, there's no restrictions on them. There's no insurance. As long as they meet a certain requirement, anybody can use them on our shoulders. And I think you'll see them even running down our sidewalks. You'll see the little red cars. I think there's one out in Harrow. Bill uses it actually. And there's one in town here that you'll see once in a while. There's no regulation for them at all at this point in time.
Further to that then, Deputy Mayor, since you seem to be very knowledgeable about it, what do all ATVs, all snowmobiles, all off-road vehicles have speedometers and lighting?
To my knowledge, not all. Snowmobiles are already permitted. It's not one that we would even have to discuss. They are already permitted under the Highway Traffic Act. Snowmobiles or ATVs and ORVs, most of them do in today's age. But I couldn't tell you all of them, but most, I would say 99% would.
So as of today, a snowmobile can drive on our main street, take up a parking space, do business, go back out and leave. Okay, good to know.
I'll go to Councillor Hammond, but before I do that, Councillor Guerin, you're talking about the Ontario Traffic Act. So the regulation states that an off-road vehicle shall be driven on the shoulder of the highway in the same direction as the traffic using the same side of the highway. So previously, you'll see this in a report, part of the focus group concern was our current shoulders on some of our rural roads are not sufficient, and it may become a hazard of that. So, but according to the Traffic Act, they are to be on the shoulder.
Let's not lose fact of the matter is that there's different modes of transportation being invented every day now. I saw a guy going through town on a wheel with two pegs sticking out the side, and he was speeding, going faster than any car in the thing. So, you know, how are we going to control all this? You know, this is we're fighting a losing battle here.
I'd like to touch base with one of the comments made by Councillor Allard about kids using them. Kids are using them now. There's no bylaw that's saying they can use them, and in no way, shape, or form would anybody in this council promote a bylaw that would allow underage users to use these. It would have to be something what I would foresee in a bylaw would be that they have to come into town, show ownership with insurance, and be required to wear proper safety equipment, as well as having an age appropriate driver's license, 16, like a G1, G2, whatever the requirements would be. And that's all things we could put into this bylaw to protect it. We can't control the misuse of these vehicles that's it's happening now. There's people that are riding them and doing things. They're going across farmers' fields now. We have no control over that other than if we catch them. And right now, I don't know that there's a lot of enforcement being done that way. However, by us looking at putting in a bylaw, it would allow us to put those restrictions into our bylaw. And again, I think like anything, when I'm paying for it and my neighbor's paying for it, but I know this guy's not, I'm going to report him because I don't think that's right. I think we should all pay for it. And with paying for that, that money could go into bylaw. I mean, we could probably determine that, I would think. And then that would allow for more bylaw officers, which would help us in other areas as well. It's just something to consider. And again, I think they're being used everywhere, and not everybody using them is breaking is a bad guy out breaking the law. They're using in county roads from farm to farm, from friend's house to friend's house. You know, they're not the bad thing they're made out to be. And by putting a bylaw in place, we can control a lot of those parameters. We could even control, for instance, not allowing them to modify the exhaust so that keeping the noise levels down. And it is important to note, when I bought my ATV, they actually had an electric one that was available, and I considered it, but range was an issue. I had range issues with it, or I would have purchased it. And again, to your question to Councillor Guerin, if you come down and saw mine's got GPS, it's got a stereo in it, it connects to my phone, I can Bluetooth talk, I've got everything but no turn signals. I've got a hand signal when I turn. Seatbelts, roll bars, it's safer than my vehicle probably.
Matey?
To you, Chair. So yeah, the points that the deputy mayor were making about, you know, the people misusing the ATVs for the ones that are going to be using them regularly. One of the problems not having a bylaw is that we can't differentiate between the two. And I think that's where, you know, the idea of all these reports coming before council, you know, we live in an area that has the most complaints about ATV usage. And all these years, 2013 to now, we haven't done anything differently. We haven't put a bylaw on the book. So this is kind of like doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result. And we all kind of know where that leads us, right? So this is why I really like to have a conversation on this, either put it to bed forever, or you know, come up with a better solution. And then as far as the e-bikes and stuff go, I don't know exactly about our municipality, but I do know we're working with IRCA. We are in the process of defining what an e-bike is, and so that we can either allow them or not allow them on some of the trails that IRCA has. But one of the biggest issues to start off with is defining what it is. And hopefully in this bylaw, we'll be able to define that. We could define an ATV that has to have turning signals, has to have headlights. And we can make that definition then. And I think that's one of the first big things that we got to do.
Definitely is a growing in popularity. There's clubs and groups and everything, and they go all over the place just like any snowmobiler would. I think now's the time to start addressing the issue and seeing if there isn't some latitude to let them on our roads.
Any other comments on this topic, council? Okay, with that ends the topics for tonight's committee of the whole. I think there has been a lot of very productive conversation and discussion. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Director Malandroupolo.
Thank you. Through the chair, I can report that council met on February 26, 2024 to hold a committee of the whole at which no specific recommendations of council were given. So now I'm looking for a mover and a seconder that council receive the report of the presiding officer of the committee of the whole and that council adopt the noted recommendations, of which there were none, of the committee of the whole. So seeing Deputy Mayor Shepley as a mover and seconded by Councillor Hammond, all in favor, and that's carried.
That was a great discussion, and I think it sounds like more is going to come out of that. I need a motion to adjourn. Councillor Allard, Councillor Guerin, all in favor? Have a good night, everybody.